I don't remember much from The Bachelor, but I remember that moment.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of faith to be in this industry, to
Mhm.
stay true to who you are, to trust that like God is going to lead you through,
Yeah.
like the ups and the downs, because even though I'm doing a lot, like I have a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I took a leap of faith to leave my legal career to fully
Yeah.
focus on being a media personality. I had to take a leap of faith. And every single time I'm at that crossroads, I question it. And then I'm like, remember when you were here and look what happened and look how he carried you through.
Back to another show of Made to Shine. And as you just heard, we are in for such a stinking treat today. We have the beautiful, amazing Rachel Lindsay on with us today from, as you probably know, The Bachelorette, but the also 1,000 other things that she does. And why I'm so excited to have her on is because you guys know here at Made to Shine, we believe every single person has a ministry. It's not just preachers, not just pastors who you listen to on your other podcast or YouTube. It's literally the way you show up, shine your light, and love people where this finds you and where you're at. And Rachel, I have seen you, I was telling you this before, I've seen you do this from afar ever since I just started following you on social, and then you're publishing all these books and you have your own podcast. And I mean, you're a wife, you're a daughter, you are a former attorney. You do so much and you shine such a special light that even before I knew you were a person of faith, I was like, I feel like this person just knows Jesus from the way that she carries herself. And so thank you for being on today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I was telling you, just knowing what your podcast is about and what you stand for, I'm just delighted that you saw something in me where you thought I could bring something to this podcast. So I'm excited for this conversation. Don't get many conversations like that, like this these days. So let's get
I
into it.
know, I know. And what a shame, right?
Right.
But I'm just so tickled and honored to have you on. And we have a tradition here at the Made to Shine podcast. Before we dive into all things Rachel, um, what is your favorite quote, Rachel, and why?
Ooh. I wish, you know how like, you see quotes and you write them down and or you
Yeah,
say, write that down. That's such a good quote. And you
all
never
the
do.
time.
So I guess I will still, the first thing that comes to the top of mind is who I dedicated my book to, which
Mm,
was The Wild at Heart Kept in Cages. And the full quote is a prayer for the wild at heart kept in cages. And it's a Tennessee Williams quote. And it's from this play, Stairs to the Roof. And when I heard about it and then I read it, it was at a time in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the protagonist in this book. I'm constantly in this routine of life. It seems very monotonous. I'm staring at the clock, waiting for work to end, waiting for what's next, waiting for some excitement, wishing for something more in life. I didn't feel fulfilled, but I felt like I had to be this certain person. So I felt like a caged bird. And so when I saw that quote, it always resonated with me. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're talking to me. And so what I've done in my life over the last 7 years has been breaking free from that, like not being that person in that cage. So I always think about that because I wonder how many other people are stuck in a place in life where they feel they're either too afraid to do what they want to do, or they feel like they have to do exactly what they're doing. And so I just love that quote, a prayer for the wild at heart kept in cages, because one, I feel like I'm wild at heart, but I'm no longer kept in a cage. So anyways, that's something that always resonated with me.
I love that. And I love that adjective wild because it's true. And even you think about what you said, the fear of like staying the same or doing what other people expect you to do, there's kind of this requirement of stopping and reflecting, and
Yeah.
that takes a wild heart to do in a day and age where everyone just wants to go so fast and
Yeah.
not stop. It's looked as a bad thing to stop. And so you think about the courage that's required to just say, hey, like I'm going to take a second and I'm going to think about, what does Rachel want? What does Annie want? Like what,
Yeah.
it's like independent of what other people want for me or want for themselves that I'm trying to copy, you know?
Absolutely,
I
absolutely,
love that.
yes, so I love sharing that, um, and I hope it resonates with someone, you know?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I feel like it's so funny. In preparation for podcasts, like I listen to interviews and articles, and so I'm always like, that's so cool thinking about the way your life has gone. And so I'm always curious what people's quotes are and how that can relate to their journey. And you've been on a journey. I mean, what I there's so many things about your story that are so relatable. And that's what I love about you is you aren't afraid to show the imperfections, the real parts.
Yeah,
And I think about like Jesus, when Jesus came back, he showed his scars. He showed what he walked through so he could be known. And you do that with the platform that you've created. But, going back to Rachel, the lawyer, and
mhm,
your friends were like, you should go on the Bachelorette, like before all of this. I'm curious, can you kind of take us through? I feel like not many people know that, Rachel,
mhm.
pre this media, Rachel. So, the most important pieces of context of your story, including your faith that led to the girl that those friends came up to entertaining the idea to go on The Bachelor.
Yeah, I mean, I lived like a pretty straightforward. I walked the line. I did
Mm,
everything, a very linear life. What I said I was going to do is what I did. I'm from Dallas, Texas, proud Texan.
yeah.
Um, my parents, they're still married. They've been married for 45 years at this point. And I grew up admiring my dad. My dad still is a lawyer, but now a judge. And I just thought he was just bigger than life. And so I too grew up saying, I want to be a lawyer from age 7.
Wow.
And that's exactly what I did. I had 2 sisters. I'm a middle child. I wouldn't say I was rebellious, but I definitely tried to push the boundaries a little bit, but
Okay.
always doing what I was supposed to do. That was me. That's the life I lived. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I also grew up, I always say, in a very pragmatic, religious household, which I was so important to me because it created a foundation and morals and values that I still carry with me through my life. And that I knew that who I wanted to share my life with, I wanted them to have that as well. I went
Yeah.
to a private Christian school my entire life. So I was getting it at home, I was getting it at church, I was getting it at school. And even though maybe I look at things a little different now, I still am so grateful for that foundation because that is who I am to this day.
Mm,
And I know
hmm.
I wouldn't be the same. I know I would not have made it through reality television if I
Yeah.
wasn't grounded and rooted in my faith. And
Yeah.
that's important to me. And I've even had a journey of being scared to talk about it, like, how would it be perceived? I
Yeah.
and then I had to self-check myself and say, like, "Well, what are you doing?" I
Mm,
often say, "You're given a platform for a reason, for a purpose." So, the fact that I have this now, how can I be quiet and hide some of the things that make me who I am? And
mm,
why am I wanting to hide it? Anyways, I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but
no.
I definitely lived a life of being the ideal daughter
Mm,
and the ideal sister, the ideal friend. So I said I was going to law school, or I was going to be a lawyer, even when I wanted to change my major in college. And I was like, I think I'm interested in this. My dad was like, but you're still going to be a lawyer, right? And I said, oh, of course, of course.
mm,
Just doing what I'm supposed to do. That's what I said I was going to do. That's going to make him proud. I went to law school. I loved what I did. I loved everything that I learned. I love everything it taught me, and I'm still able to use those skills today, but I didn't feel fulfilled. I really didn't. I was in a relationship at that time with a guy who checked everything off my list. He's everything that I wanted on paper, but it was not a good relationship for me. 5 years, where were we going? We were going nowhere. So at the point when my friends, coworkers knocked on my door, I was at a place in my life where I just felt like something was missing. And it was
mm,
this question that I was having with myself but I'm doing everything that I said I was going to do. And I'm with the person that is my ideal guy. Why do I feel so empty at the same time? It was like I wasn't walking in my purpose, even though I was
mm,
doing what I said I was going to do. And
mm,
those feelings and that emotion led me, because if I had been in a different place in my life, I never would have said yes to The Bachelor. That
yeah.
led me to saying, you know what? Maybe an escape and a reset is what I need, even
Yeah.
if it's as wild as going on reality TV. It was a bit of rebellion for me because the first time I was going to do something solely that I wanted to do, that I knew my family might not support, my friends might not support. I was leaving that relationship. I didn't know if my job would support it, but I felt like I needed to do this for me. And I had never in my life made a selfish decision. And I use quotes when I say that, selfish decision for me until that moment.
Wow. So, what, because I feel like so many people will be listening, and I resonate to growing up. I joke I'm a recovering people pleaser because
Yeah.
I just, and recovering to lose. I mean, I still struggle. It's like an everyday intention. You have to say, okay, am I making this decision for me? Or am I trying to create a version of myself that I think someone else wants me to be or approve
Right.
of? And, it's funny when we think about this word purpose, I feel like it has such a weight. And we think our purpose is, I feel like there's so many external influences we use to create this idea of purpose rather than sinking and figuring out what that is to us. What was the difference for you acting on making that decision to just do something that no one else understood? Because I think about the 99.6782% of women that are like, Rachel, I've thought about doing this thing, but everybody's going to be mad at me. So I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. So what was different about this time?
Maybe a little desperation. I
Yeah.
just, I was that person. I was 31 when things changed for me. And I was that person who was like, oh, I really want to do this. Like, I even was like, I really want to get into sports. I really, really want to work in, because my major sports management. I really want to build a platform with communication in sports. But I was too afraid to take that leap. I was like, who's going to take me seriously? It's so different from what people know me as. They know me as the lawyer. And so I
Yeah.
think it was just a little of, this opportunity has been presented to me. It's so far, like in left field, that it
Yeah.
has to mean something. And I just was, I was also in therapy at this point. So I had
Love
started
that.
therapy a year before I went on the Bachelor. And so I think that also opened my eyes because I was starting to reconcile with, you know, the way I grew up, maybe certain expectations I had for myself. And I was starting to think about things in a way that I didn't before. And I think that my eyes were already open.
Yeah.
And that gave me the courage to say, actually, my therapist told me to do it. So maybe that's, maybe that
I love
helps.
that. That's like
Like,
clinical
just go
advice right
for it.
there. Go do the best.
Just go for it. Just take this, because sometimes, therapist is a sounding board. And so she'd listen to me say all these things. And she's like, Rachel, you're saying you want this, you want this, you
Mhm.
want this. This could be an opportunity for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I didn't have that, I might have just stayed in my head and I would have been too scared to do it. But I
Yeah.
constantly was living in fear. And then finally I just said to myself, so why not? Why not? What do you have to lose? Just go for it. What could
Mhm.
be on the other side of saying yes?
Mhm.
And that moment in my life is how I check and humble myself today. I think about that girl who almost said no, and I wonder where I would have been, where I would be if I had said no. And then I look at where I am because I said yes. And so you never know what's on the other side of saying yes. You don't. You don't know what's on the other side of saying no. So I I now encourage people. I'm like, just go for it. What do you have
Yeah.
to lose?
It's so true. And I think you use the word desperate, and I love that you said that because I think desperation is this, it has a negative connotation to it in today's day and age. Like you want to be the person that has it all together. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like I so resonate with you in the sense of, for a long time, my identity struggle was I loved being the girl that just had it figured out.
Yeah.
And I look back in my life and it sounds similar to you. The most amazing like moments of recognition that I've seen God, it's the moments I'm like, I literally I have no idea. I don't know how you're gonna fix this. I don't know how you're gonna dig me out of this ditch, or I'm unfulfilled. Like I don't know. And then something comes up. And it's like that desperation is such an ingredient, I think, to fulfillment because it directs you towards the one who's going to provide that fulfillment
Yeah.
ultimately. And so I'm curious, like in this season, where you're going to therapy, your friends bring up this idea, she's like, go on The Bachelor, and then going on it, and it's so different. What's your relationship with faith look like right now? And how is that different from when you kind of grew up and it sounds more of like a traditional environment?
I'm so glad I literally, as you were talking, I was just thinking about faith because I think it's easy to think of faith in regards, and this is going back to who I was at 31. I only thought of it related to church and religion, and
Mhm,
like trust in
mhm,
God and have
mhm.
faith, and it's the evidence of things not seen, and like I've looked at it like that, but then in my own life, I wasn't applying it. I didn't have
Mhm.
faith that I would be okay, that he would carry me through, that he would that, like, trust in him in everyday decisions. I was
Yeah.
still trying to control that, and I was only like faith in church. And as I decided to take that leap of faith, right? Like we talk about this leap of faith, even in religious context, but I wasn't applying it in life. I wasn't trusting that God would carry me through to have the desires of the things that I wanted. I was
Yeah.
doing things the way I thought I was supposed to, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't
Mm,
getting what I wanted. So the moment that I let that go, um, I started to fly. And I actually said, like, when I allowed him, like, trusted in him, I'm just going to do this, right? I'm no control. I'm not going to control the situation. I'm just going to say yes and let it go from there and trust in it. And I remember I was on The Bachelor, and there was down to the final three. And I remember this producer came in because they were really trying to get me to open up. And he
mm,
said, why did you do this? What do you want from
mhm,
this? And I paused for a second because I was like, well, I could give the boiler, like the typical answer of, I just want to find love. And then I just thought about it and I was like, no, I was like, I took a leap of faith and I came to fly. That's what I said to him.
love that.
And I don't remember much from The Bachelor, but I remember that moment, and he
Yeah.
was kind of taken aback from it. And so, you ask me how I apply it to my life. It takes a lot of faith to be in this industry, to
Mhm.
stay true to who you are, to trust that like God is going to lead you through,
Yeah.
like the ups and the downs, because even though I'm doing a lot, like I have a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I took a leap of faith to leave my legal career to fully
Yeah.
focus on being a media personality. I had to take a leap of faith, and every single time I'm at that crossroads, I question it, and then I'm like, remember when you were here, and look what happened, and look how he carried you through. Right now I'm in a season, having left the job that defined me for 3 years with Extra. I find myself doubting and questioning, and then I'm
Mhm.
like, you know what, you've been here before and you were okay because you had faith.
Yeah.
So now I'm so much better at applying faith to my everyday life, when normally I feel like I only had it on Sundays, to be very honest.
Mhm. Oh, amen. I think everyone falls into that trap, especially if you grow up. It's almost sometimes like the downfall of growing up in a super religious home. Yes, you're introduced to Jesus, but you're also introduced to God in such a way that he's limited to the four walls of a church. And it's
Yep.
like, God, his spirit lives in us. He calls us the church. So wherever we go, God is there with us. He's there with you on your way to your marketing class, or when you're super scared to go on that first date, or whatever it is. Like, God is with you in that. And I love that you said that when you were talking about reminding yourself of God's goodness and his faithfulness. It made me think of, like, in the Old Testament, when they were trying to go to Canaan, they would set up altars everywhere to remind themselves of God's victories with
Mhm.
wars and it just made me think, they had physical altars that reminded them of that. What are those for that in our life? Like,
Yeah.
I just, is your natural tendency just right off the bat when you're scared or fearful, you just remember all those things? Or do you do something to practically like center yourself and be able to go back?
I mean, I do check myself with okay, Rachel, it's, Friday, this time of day. What would you be doing had you said no? I do. That is
Wow.
how I check
I
myself.
love
I
that.
also talk to myself a lot.
Me
Um,
too.
And in talking to myself, I talk to God. I'm
Yeah.
a big Chance the Rapper fan, and Chance has this song where he's like, "I speak to God in public. I speak to God." I'm like, "That's me." I'm like
Mhm.
constantly just like
Mhm.
talking out loud, well, to myself, like whispering to myself or
Mhm.
talking in my head. And then one of the things that I love to do that also centers me and keeps me grounded, I see God in nature. And one of my favorite
Mm.
things to do is to get up and walk my dogs. And I
Yeah.
put AirPods in. I'm never listening to anything. So if anybody ever sees me, I can hear you. I'm not listening to anything.
What a good tip.
I just do it because, but I am just in my thoughts. I am, like soaking it all up. I'm walking outside. I'm very present. I'm paying attention to things. It's very grounding to get up in the morning early.
Yeah.
Nobody's there. I walk my dogs and I'm just extremely present. And I'm talking to myself and I'm talking to God. Sometimes, like, I'll listen to stuff, mainly that's it. And that is a very centering moment before the day starts, before things get crazy, before I get too wrapped up into my head and lose my way in the day. That's what I like to do to start off my day.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I
Use
like save my prayers for night, but then I end up, next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm like, oops,
yeah.
oops, I missed
No.
it. So that's really good for me. It's a
Yes.
really good practice for me.
I love that. And it's like scripture says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. And our breath is a way of praise. Like, I think
Mhm.
we do think prayer is like, okay, right before bed, say thank you, no, but how you breathe throughout the day, how you talk throughout the day. I mean, in all of it. And that word present, I was reading a book last night. It's so good. It's called, have you read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
No,
You
but
should.
it
I'm
sounds
going to send you the
like
information. It's so good. But it talks about how the enemy can't change your destiny that God has for you. So it's going to try to change how aware you are of it. And
Mhm.
the enemy's greatest fear is basically like you connecting with God and then you connecting with the present moment. Because when you connect with the present moment, you realize like God gave you this day your daily bread, not Saturday, not like this moment, this day. And by connecting
Right.
to the present, it makes you aware of his goodness in your life, of his mercy,
Mhm.
of his faithfulness. And so I love that you said the word present, because that's something I'm working on too.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely a struggle to do, but I've found that because I haven't been consistent with meditation. I haven't been consistent with yoga.
Yeah.
Because for me, meditation is breath work, it's prayer, it's a lot of different things, right? It's setting my intention for the day, it's focusing on what I'm grateful for. I have not been consistent with that. I'm
Yeah.
very consistent with getting up and walking my dogs. And so I take that time of the day to do that. And my husband sometimes is like, "Hey, you want me to go with you or you want me to take the dogs?" I'm like, "Nope, got it."
Oh, you gotta set your boundaries. I love it. I love it. And I want so okay, I want to go back because you also, I think not a lot of people realized after The Bachelor, you went back to being a lawyer for a little
Mhm.
bit of time. And
Yeah,
so talk to me about that because I don't think people realize like you went back to
yeah.
doing, did going back have to do with the fact you identified as yourself with a lawyer for so long, or kind of talk to me through that period?
Absolutely. You're right. Most people think, "Oh, she moved to LA and she started doing TV." No, I went back and I stopped working I worked till the end of 2018. So when
Hmm.
2019 started, it was my first time not practicing law. Um, I needed to get out of the Hollywood entertainment world. Not
Mm,
because anything was happening, just because I didn't want to lose myself in it. When I
right.
finished Bachelor, that those couple of months between, so Bachelor finishes in November, we started filming Bachelorette in March. I worked the entire months before. I was actually in trial because that grounded me.
So
I
you
had,
were in trial knowing you were about to be the Bachelorette.
yeah, every
Wow.
Monday
Okay.
night. And because it's actually crazy because I was in trial, I was doing a direct examination of someone. I left, went to Jimmy Kimmel to announce I was the Bachelorette, flew overnight to Good Morning America to do it there, and then flew home and was waiting for the jury verdict. And the judge called me in and was like, "Why didn't you tell people that you're on TV? The jury was watching Good Morning America today and they're going crazy." And I said, "Well, The Bachelor's on currently on Mondays." When I did jury selection and I had a co chair, I said, "My name's Rachel Lindsay. Does anyone know me?" Nobody knew. So the jury did not
Oh.
watch The Bachelor, but they definitely watched Good Morning America. And
And so
so
wait, was that problematic? Like they were going crazy in a bad way or like in a way?
no, they were excited, but it's like
Okay.
it didn't affect what the jury was doing by any means. But I yeah, so that kept me grounded in between Bachelor and Bachelorette. It brought me back to what I know, who I am. So I wanted to surround myself with family, friends, work. And so I wanted to do that exact same thing when I came off the show. And thankfully, Brian was willing to move to Texas. So he got certified to practice in Texas. It was easier for him. And so we moved back. And that's, I guess I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because that also is a safe comfort place for me. And so I couldn't take a full leap of faith by saying, I'm going to just move to LA and try it. But I
Mhm.
also didn't want to be defined as a person who went on TV and just gave up everything they worked for. A part of
Yeah.
my identity is wrapped up in being a lawyer. And then, so I wanted to still do that. But then also a part of me was scared of what people would think about me. Would they question me? Would they say, "Oh, she just wanted to be famous anyway," which wasn't true. So it was this push and pull a little bit between both. Um, and I found a place where I was able to practice law. And then on the weekends, I was flying to Connecticut to do sports radio until it got to be too much. And I was
Yeah.
sitting in my hairdresser's chair and I was just telling her how exhausted I am. And
Yeah.
she said, "You can't pour out of an empty cup. What do you think you're doing that's holding you back from what you really want to do?" And for the first time out loud, I said, "My legal career." And she was like, "Then you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Like, you can always come back to it." And 2 weeks later, I gave my 2 week notice. And once again, the moment I did that, I was able to fly. So many things opened
Wow.
up for me. But to go back to your original question, yeah, I went back because that is what defined me. That's what was
Mhm.
comfortable to me. That was my safe place. And then also I stepped back into that fear of, well, this is what I know. What will people think
Yeah.
if I try to be
Yeah.
something different?
I love that your story is a stepping stone story because
Mhm.
I do think we live in such a day and age, especially with this younger generation. We think we have to make these sharp 180 decisions and it's all or nothing. That's all like the self-development motivational gurus. It's like you're all in or you're all out. You can't be either. And I'm like, I think God is a stepping stone God. I think that, you know, a pattern I've seen in your story is almost this compilation of unfulfillment and desperation feelings
Mhm.
lead to
Mhm.
these moments of flying.
Yeah,
And I think to have faith that, you know, in accepting the stepping stone and understanding things take time, people
right.
don't have the courage to take time anymore. And that's where I'm just like, gosh, if just have the faith in God to allow things to take time and you will feel it when it's the right time. You
Yeah.
will feel it. And you felt it when you were unfulfilled and your therapist was telling you go on the Bachelor. And then when you were talking to your hairdresser and she was like, what's the thing holding you back the most? It's almost like you can't hold it in anymore. And
Yeah.
so I love that it's kind of a barometer on when to step out fully, right? But all that to say, I'm curious. There's a quote that I love. It's a lot of becoming who you're meant to be in life is unbecoming everything you never were in the first place. And I think a lot of that is, I know it's like my favorite quote. That's what I would open it up with. I love that quote. But I think a lot of that is kind of the story of the gospel. It's like we entered into this world with sin, but God created us as his children before we were even born. Throughout this entire progression, going on The Bachelor, going back to being a lawyer, doing all these things, and now doing all that you're doing, what are what's kind of like the unbecoming things of Rachel? What are you finding that's unfolding about yourself that there's parts of you that were always there but you didn't know and that you can ground and say like this is my identity. This is who I am.
Hmm. Well, at the my little dog. At the
Dogs
start
are
of
welcome.
you were talking about ministries. Well, I remember being in school. I just went to a private Christian school. We took a test about spiritual gifts
Hmm.
and like kind of like a personality test, but
Yeah.
it was determining what your spiritual gifts were and like kind of maybe it was like Sunday school, but it was Yeah, it had to have been because then this is what you can a department you could work in. Like, this is, like, how
Mm.
you can minister with these spiritual gifts that you have. And so I feel like and then even my mom has said things of, I feel like when I saw you as a kid or certain things that you did, like I was in speech meets growing up, or I love to like communicate with people, or I was like
Mhm.
bringing people together. And she's like, all these little things that you did show me that you were meant to do the things like to be on this path. I looked at it as, oh, I'm a good communicator. Oh, I should be a lawyer. I
Mhm.
love the law, and of course I want to be like my dad, but I thought, oh, that means I should be doing this.
Yeah.
And then when that didn't fulfill me, it's like, well, what should I be doing?
Yeah.
How should I? And so I think about things like that. I think this is answering your question. Let me know if
It
it's not.
is.
I
Mhm.
think I go back to thinking about that quiz of taking
Mm.
spiritual gifts. And it's like I always was supposed to have some sort of platform to
Yes.
be able to connect to people and speak out and share my story and my experience, not go on a show,
Mhm.
do it, find love, and like disappear. I
Mhm.
always felt this pull like there was something more that I needed to be doing, which is why I think I felt so out of place
Mhm.
as I was 5, 6 years practicing law. It's like, why isn't this making sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think though too, not to dismiss like God used your law career to give you skills
Sure.
and characteristics that you would need now in what you're doing.
True,
And I
very true.
think we get so married to God's first draft for us that we're so resistant to the next even better draft of what he has. I know I
Right.
myself, I when I was younger, I wanted to be a preacher. I was like 8 years old, Rachel. We had a wedding for my cat and dog because in my mind preachers married people. And it's funny because this podcast is my ministry. This is
Yes.
my version of ministry. And it is nothing in a gazillion years like 8-year-old Annie would have seen or envisioned, but God did, and God saw
Mhm.
it. And like God saw you doing what you're doing, impacting so many people. But those years of not being known at a wide scale, I guess I'm curious how you think that prepared for you to hold up the platform you have now with the character you do.
Um, I have to give credit to my parents and what they instilled in me and their example. One, you know, obviously taking us to church, making church such an important part of our lives, but it was also their heart of service. And I
Mm.
just remember being a kid and we played piano. And I remember going to like visit the sick and shut in with my mom in her group, and I would play the piano. I remember her having me say like my speeches because I was always doing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speeches. And so she would have me saying those. I remember going with my mom to serve food. She did Meals on Wheels. I remember going with my parents for voting and them talking about that. I remember them being a part of so many different church groups, of them teaching VBS, Sunday school. And I just remember, I don't even remember what your question is, but I'm going towards the heart of the
No,
service.
this is right on track, girl. This is
But I
great.
remember, like, it's funny how as a kid, that stuff doesn't resonate with you. And then you get older and you start thinking of like, why am I this way, or why do I have it? And I go back, and especially when I was writing my book, it's like my parents instilled so much. And even more so, and this is like hitting me because I just lost my grandmother, and I got really close with my grandmother in 2009. I didn't live in the same city that she lived in, and so we became super close. I lived with her for a summer. And then, fast forwarding to her passing and listening to the way people talked about her, and even how I got to know her, I'd always like joke, I'm like, my grandmother is a saint. But hearing people speak about her, how selfless she is, what a religious woman she was, how much faith she had, how she made something out of nothing because, she just trusted in God. And seeing how that legacy is passed on through my mom and
Yeah,
even to me, I feel like has allowed me to do the things that I'm doing, which again, I think was your question. Or,
it is. It is.
or I come from like a family, particularly with women, not to take my dad out of the picture because he is absolutely amazing in what he does, his heart of service with mentoring, also being involved in
Yeah.
church. But I just come from a long list of women who I feel like are selfless, have a heart of service, and have faith. And I
Yeah.
feel that
That's so
has
good.
made me into the woman that I am today.
Yeah.
I'm able to carry that out in the things that I do today.
I love that. And I know we're coming up on time here, but I want to affirm what you just said because there's another quote, big quote girl over here, which is always make sure the light shining on you is never greater than the light shining through you.
Mm,
And I just think about the space that you're in. There's a lot of people with lots of lights on them all the time.
yeah.
What do you think is the cost of someone in a position like yours not leading with a servant heart, not leading with knowing you're so dearly loved by a heavenly father, or like knowing your worth is not in what you do?
I would say, especially because of the industry we're in, you will never feel fulfilled. I
Mm,
feel like if you're not, giving back, I'll repeat something I said with you have a platform for a reason. There's a
yeah,
purpose behind it. And if you're not using it for good, then what are we doing? I
yeah,
just feel like if you're using it for selfless reasons, then you're never going, one, you're not going to step into who you're supposed to be, but also you're going to live such an unhappy life.
yeah,
And you're always going to be chasing for something to give you what it is that you need if you're not
yeah.
doing it in the way that you're supposed to. And
Mhm,
particularly with helping others, right? Like I just don't, even whatever you believe, it's like do unto others as you would have them
yeah,
do unto you, right? Like the
mhm,
golden rule. You're taught that
yeah,
period.
yeah,
How do you not want to reach back? How do you not look at the things that you've been blessed with, the things that you've been given, the opportunities, and not say, I want to help someone else?
mhm,
Or I remember when I was that girl or that
mhm,
man, and I want, to let them know, hey, young girl, young man, you're going to be okay. Hey,
yeah,
I just don't understand
yeah.
how you can just like live in your own space and be that
It's so
self.
true.
And I'm glad I can't understand it. I really am.
Yeah. Well, it's like we are designed to be conduits of love, not cul-de-sacs of it. We're not supposed to keep it all in our little neighborhood, right? And I think about you said the word platform, and I love that you said that word because everyone has one.
Yeah.
Regardless if you have 5 million followers or you are a person working a corporate marketing job with two people in your office, like everybody has a platform and an opportunity to love and to shine light. And God trusts, like, if we could all just change our perception to, like, God trusted me with these people that I'm talking to today. One of my favorite Bible stories is the feeding of the 5,000. And even the language, like, the disciples were talking about the crowd, the crowd. And Jesus never used the word crowd, he used the word people. And I love that because it's like
Mhm.
Jesus is a personal son of God, right? And it's like he doesn't see crowds, he sees people that need to be fed. And if we just looked at everybody in our life as just people that need to be fed and we have love that can feed them, I think things like that are what change the world. I do, you know?
Absolutely. I love the way you put that. I just saw something on social media where a group of friends were having an argument over what kind of fish Jesus was feeding them. They were like, it had to be sushi, right? It had to have been
Salmon, tilapia, what we got?
event.
I love it. Yeah, it definitely was sushi. That's God fish right there. That's amazing. Okay, Rachel, we're capping us out. Last question here is we're speaking to 18 to 25 year olds. So going back to that version of Rachel, how would you encourage her in her faith? And then
Mhm.
also, what advice would that version of Rachel have for you today?
Oof. Um, well, I don't know what that Rachel would tell me today. I think, well, okay, I do know what she would say, but going to what I would say to that Rachel or to someone listening that's that age, that is who I wrote the book for. When they say who missed me with that, my book of essays, I said, they said, who's your target audience? And I wrote to the girl who was in
Yeah.
college or in that 20 something. And what would I say to her? That girl who was too scared to live her own life. And I
Mm,
said, I wish I would have asked the question, whose life is it that you're living?
wow.
And then when you answer that question, like for me, it would have been like, I'm living the life that my parents want me to live, like the good life. Yes, there's some aspects that I want to, but I'm being the good girl, I'm being the people pleaser. But what is it that I really want to do? And then I would act on that and trust and have faith. Going back to what I said before, I would apply that faith to my everyday life and trust that there's a reason that I have this desire in my heart.
Mhm.
Like God gave me this
Yeah.
desire in my heart.
Yeah.
So why am I not acting on it?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I wish I would have done that. Like I'm very thankful that all, this is a part of my story, and so I have all of this to tell. It's supposed to happen when it happened, but I wish that maybe that's something that I wouldn't have been too afraid to do. Like, don't be afraid. Don't let fear hold you back from your
Mhm.
heart's desire. That's what I would tell myself.
Mhm.
Um, and then because there's time, right? Like you think, oh, I have
Yeah.
to do things right now, or if I make this decision, it sets the rest of the decisions for the rest. I
Yeah.
mean, it does,
Yeah.
but I mean the career path. Like I have to stay in this career forever.
Mhm.
No, you can start over, you can reinvent yourself, you can do it all over again. I've done it again. I'm in the process of doing it again right now. So
Mhm.
don't be scared to follow your heart's desires. That's what I would say. And I think that Rachel would tell me now, um, I think she would tell me to have a little bit more fun. Like relax,
Really?
I mean, have fun, but like I'm sometimes I think I get caught this industry is tough and I think I get caught
Mhm.
up in like what's next? What's next? You have to do this. And
Yeah.
it's like just chill. That Rachel would say, go hang out with your friends a little bit more. Go see your little nephews. Go
Yeah.
spend time with your family. I think that's what that Rachel would say. Like, don't get
Mm.
so caught up in the work part of life. Go do a little bit more and enjoy life. Take the time to enjoy life a little bit more.
I
Because
love that.
that Rachel did. That Rachel.
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah, it makes me think of this guy I love listening to. He always talks about feeling the day. Like people
Mhm.
don't feel the day anymore. They're just so blah, and their minds are on like 7,000 days from now or ruminating on the stupid thing they did 6 days ago. It's one of the two. And you just going back to your word present, like you literally miss it. You
Yes.
miss this moment. And I love that you said she would tell you that because it also indicates it's a practice. It's not natural. It is
Mhm.
not natural to be present at all. It's
No,
very hard. In fact, you have to be super intentional about it.
right.
But I love that that's something you're mindful of. And Rachel, it was such a delight. You are so wonderful and just truly such a light. I can just tell from now speaking with you and then watching you from afar again, like you are someone whose light really does shine more through them than the light that's shining on them. And so
Oh,
thank you. Thank you for just being on and sharing your heart today.
thank you so much for the beautiful conversation. I really appreciate it. So nice to meet you.
And I hope that this blessed you and encouraged you, reminded you that God gave you a unique light and it is your job to shine it in this world because we need you to. That being said, if you were blessed by this message and you can think of anybody else that also needs this type of encouragement, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. It helps me out a lot and helps this message that I do believe God gave my heart to share with the world gets out. I hope you have such an amazing rest of your day.